The first thing I did in this phase of the painting was to put a layer of acrylic medium over the top of the painting. In this case, I use clear tar gel. It's a product made by Golden Colors, and one of the strange things about acrylics is that the medium looks quite milky when it's wet. Now this will dry quite transparent, so all this milky layer that's over the top will just be clear when it dries. Initially this sort of bothered me, but if you try it a few times, I think you'll find that it's not that big of an issue. Since the clear tar gel is over the entire surface, you tend to adjust your thinking accordingly and adjust your values. Now I'm just mixing up some sky color here and putting this in to the acrylic medium that's over the top. Now I added a little bit of a retarding gel into this medium so that it would stay wet a little bit longer. For this session it worked about right. I put about 1/10 retarding gel into the medium and then just used a palette knife and just scraped it over the entire surface. I'm basically using 3 colors. I'm using Hansa Yellow, Light, Naphthol Red, and Ultramarine Blue. And I do use a little bit of purple here and there, so I pull out a little extra paint to add. But I just paint right over everything. You can see I'm painting over the stem of that tree trunk there, and I'll just scrape that out at a later moment before it dries, obviously. But as long as it's wet, I can find the track of that stroke and just scrape it right out. I usually use ceramic tools. I have a set of plastic ceramic tools that work really well for that. So I'm just mixing up some shades of green using the Hansa Yellow. I did want to use both arms to paint this. I wanted to load my brush with my left hand, but since the last painting session I fell and broke my arm, so just trying to get along as best I can. And I actually ended up doing the whole painting with palette knives, which turned out fine. You can see there's some pretty nice texture there regardless. Sometimes the palette knife will tend to give a overall kind of uniform look, but I'm really trying to keep the color very unmixed. I try to dab it on without disturbing the brush strokes too much. I had a really nice stroke there and I just kind of obliterated it, so it's not always successful. But now one thing I can say, watching this video now, is perhaps I put some of the paint on a little bit too thick, and maybe if I were to do it again I might do a little bit more of a dry scumble over the top of the underpainting to let some of the color show through. Picked up a little bit of yellow just to smear into there to make that warm up a little bit. Overall this painting is getting pretty cool, but it's kind of an interesting effect with that red kind of showing through there. It really can vibrate in some areas and work really nice. One thing you want to try to avoid is a 50-50 balance of warm and cool. That generally is going to be boring. So you want to try to shake things up, keep your temperature off balance. Just warming up some of the top sections of the tree there, and keeping my touch pretty light, just hitting the tops of some of those strokes underneath. In some cases I do want to keep some of the darker areas a little bit cooler than maybe otherwise, so I'm adding some pure ultramarine blue. And that's one of the nice things about the palette knife, is you can mix a lot of your color right on the canvas, and that can be a very energetic way to apply the paint. I mixed up some very grayish green and just scumbled it over the top of that small tree. So I'm just trying to think of how I want the warms and cools to kind of undulate over this form. The idea here is to break up the surface with warms and cools so that that's what gives the form. I don't want to get too linear, but I do scrape out later some shapes with some ceramic tools. So I want the form to turn somewhat, but I want some areas to lie rather flat. My original idea on this was to try to make a painting that was partially abstract, partially impressionistic, then with a lot of sgraffito back into it. I wanted to superimpose some drawing. So you might say that sgraffito sort of acts like a Cloisonnism effect. I've never been totally comfortable just taking a brush and outlining things. That always seemed a little too unsubtle to me. But obviously, Van Gogh did it fantastic. Gauguin did it. Many people can do it very successfully. So it's just something I've never really felt super comfortable with. But scraping into the surface, I just really love it. It gives a lot of vitality to the surface. So I don't want to get things too flat, so I was starting to kind of break up some of the flatness there. Like some of that blue was just reading as a flat chunk of color. So I'm pushing in some yellows into that. And now I have added a little bit of blue. You can see a little bit of pink. Red. I've added a little bit of red. So there's just a bit of pink, and that's kind of graying the green down just a little bit, which I like. That's quite effective. That's a really beautiful stroke there. Sometimes when you're in the thick of things, it's hard to lay down a great stroke and just leave it. But and then again, sometimes the stroke will be really beautiful, but it doesn't set into that space, so you have to get rid of it too. So you don't want to fall in love with the detail. You want to always be stepping back and taking a look at the big picture. So later I do come in and glaze this part right here. I warmed it up a little bit too much, and I felt like it really needed to be a little cooler, so that plane would turn down towards the water. So I do go in and add some ultramarine blue over the top. So again, I'm really trying hard to make sure there's a nice variety of warms, cools, and grays, and that I don't get too heavy-handed with any one aspect of the surface. Now I do think the sky is a little bit flat, but I go in later and give a little bit more variety to the flat plane. So, plus I think in this shot the light is a little bit burned out towards the top. I step back quite frequently to take a look, and I'm just putting in some whites here. There's quite a bit of yellow into that white. Just warm that up a little bit to give a little vibration over the top of that blue.